It's been years since the world said goodbye to Don Rickles, the sharp-tongued legend of comedy who made millions laugh with his one-of-a-kind style. On stage, he was bold, fearless, and full of life. But behind all the jokes and laughter was a man with a very real story, a story his family stayed quiet about for a long time. Until now. For decades, Don Rickles was known as the insult comic, someone who could roast you in seconds and still have you laughing. He was friends with big names, Frank Sinatra, Johnny Carson, even late-night hosts like David Letterman. But while the spotlight made him look untouchable, things at home were far more complicated. His family, especially his wife Barbara and daughter Mindy, mostly kept their private life away from the cameras. They smiled in interviews and kept the jokes going, just like Don would have wanted. But as time passed, the weight of what they were holding inside started to grow heavier. And after his death in 2017, something changed. They weren't just grieving a public figure, they were grieving the man they knew behind the curtain. Over the last few years, little pieces of their truth have started to come out. Quiet moments in interviews, small stories that never made it to the headlines. Moments that hinted at pain, regret, and things left unsaid. It wasn't just about losing a husband or a father, it was about carrying years of silence, and wondering if the world really knew the full story. And now, for the first time, they're beginning to share that story. It's raw. It's emotional. And it's not as picture-perfect as people might expect. Because behind the legend was a man, flawed, human, and at times hurting. And the people who loved him the most are finally ready to say what they've kept inside for so long. Don Rickles built a wall of jokes around himself. To the world, he was the guy who never took anything seriously. He made fun of everyone, celebrities, politicians, even his closest friends, and he got away with it because deep down, people knew he wasn't being cruel. It was his way of connecting. But what most people didn't see was how often he used humor to hide pain. At home, Don struggled with something he rarely talked about, the fear of being forgotten. In an industry where people rise and fall quickly, that fear stayed with him even in his final years. He worried that once the laughs stopped, the world might move on without him. And according to his daughter Mindy, that fear often came out as frustration. Not with the people around him, but with himself. His wife Barbara was his rock. They were married for over 50 years, and while she supported him through everything, it wasn't always easy. Life with Don meant constant travel, public attention, and watching the man she loved give his energy to crowds night after night, while saving very little for himself. She shared in recent interviews that there were times when he seemed lost, even lonely, especially when the stage lights went off. There were also health issues in his final years. Don had diabetes, and as he got older, his body just couldn't keep up with the energy his mind still had. He wanted to keep performing, to keep making people laugh, but it got harder and harder. According to his family, watching him push himself through the pain was heartbreaking. He wouldn't admit it at the time, but they could see it. And all of that, his fear, his silence, his need to keep the laughs coming, took a toll on the people closest to him. They loved him deeply, but loving Don Rickles meant watching him wear a mask in front of the world, and sometimes even at home. It wasn't about fame or money. It was about a man who had given so much of himself to comedy that he didn't always know how to just be himself. After Don Rickles passed away in 2017, his family stayed quiet for a long time. They were dealing with their own grief and wanted to protect the memory of the man they loved. But over the years, bits and pieces of their truth started to come out, and they paint a very different picture than the one fans saw on stage. His daughter Mindy has shared how difficult those final months really were. She spoke about how Don hated looking weak, and how he kept trying to crack jokes even when he was in pain. It was his way of saying, "I'm still me," but the family could see that behind the smile, he was scared. Mindy admitted that there were moments when her father's tough humor made it hard for them to talk about what he was really feeling. Barbara, his wife of more than half a century, has been even more open lately. She's spoken about how Don's comedy persona sometimes carried over into their personal life. He was never cruel, but it was hard for him to switch off the comedian mode. She's admitted that there were times when she wished he would slow down, just be present, and let himself be vulnerable, but that wasn't who Don was. He was always on, always the entertainer. And then there are the regrets. Don had friends all over Hollywood, Sinatra, Carson, Letterman, and so many more, but his family says that in his later years, he sometimes felt isolated. Show business can be a lonely place when the spotlight starts to fade. Mindy has said that she wishes they'd had more quiet time together, away from the cameras and the tours, just to talk and laugh as a family. These confessions aren't meant to tear down Don's legacy. If anything, they make him more human. They show that behind all the fame and success was a man who had his own struggles, insecurities, and moments of doubt. The family's honesty reminds us that even the funniest people can carry heavy hearts. Now that more time has passed, Don Rickles' family has found the strength to be honest, not just about who he was to the world, but who he was to them. They're not trying to change how people remember him. They still celebrate his wild humor, his quick wit, and the way he could light up a room with just one line. But they also want people to understand the full picture, because behind every legend, there's a human being. His daughter Mindy has said that she still hears his voice in her head, cracking jokes at the worst possible times, just like he used to do. It brings her comfort, but it also reminds her of how much she misses the real moments. The quiet ones. The times when he wasn't trying to be funny, when he was just Dad. Those are the memories she holds closest. Barbara, his wife, still speaks about him with both love and sadness. She's proud of everything he accomplished, but you can hear in her voice that there's still a part of her that aches. Not just because he's gone, but because he carried so much on his own. She says he didn't always know how to ask for help, and sometimes, he didn't even know he needed it. Their stories don't take away from Don Rickles' legacy, they deepen it. They show that even the biggest stars can struggle behind the scenes, and that laughter can sometimes be a shield. For fans, it's a reminder to look beyond the spotlight. For his family, it's a way of finally telling the whole truth, even if it hurts. Years later, the world still remembers Don Rickles as the king of the roast. But now, thanks to his family, we also remember him as a husband, a father, and a man who, like all of us, had his own battles. And maybe that's the most honest tribute of all.